I want to do something sort of a bit special this year, so I thought we're going to do a Les Paul Standard, because the Les Paul Standard, as everybody knows, it's a numero uno, the most coveted, the most prestigious wanted instrument on the planet. They started production in 1958. What I'm holding is a 1958 Standard, Les Paul Standard. Behind me, the immediate guitar behind me, this one, that's a 1959, and everyone goes, oh, it's got to be a 59. Well, between me and you, a 58 or a 59 they're both as nice as each other. A 1960, this is a mid-60, where things have changed over in the production, the specification and everything else, which I'll explain a bit later. So each guitar we'll use in its own way and talk about it. My first Les Paul Standard when I was 19, back in 1974, was a 58. And I used to play it in a band. I was in a version of Black Magic Woman. The characteristic of a 58 Les Paul to a 59 is the break angle from the neck is slightly forward. It's a lower profile, and if you get a good one, which this is, they tend to have a much more smoother and thicker bass end than you associate with a 59. Because of my association back in the day with Gary Moore and his amazing ability, I wanted to do something that he wrote and played, which was basically the song Midnight Blues. I nearly forgot that. Sorry, Gary. But anyway, so basically I want to do it on the 59, which was good to do because the sound of a 59 is a lot more open, a lot more tonal, and I got a good range on it. I could take the sound down and get the atmospherics better, and playing harmonics on it. So that actually worked out very well. And then obviously the little chat about Gary and different bits and pieces because of my association and with the guitar. As I said before, this is a 59. It's the one that people sort of have on the internet. This is the one to have, and has it got a 9 in front of the digits and da-da-da-da-da. And they're great, as I said before, but then so's an early 60 and so's a 1958. In fact, you can find 1957 gold top standards. If you're only half rich, you can have one of those for about half the price of a Sunburst one. This is pretty much the same guitar. But as I say, this happens to fit all the criteria with the serial number, year and so on. But structurally, the necks are slightly more sculpted than a 58, which is nice, but they vary. So some 58s are bigger than 59s and vice versa. They really do cross over. But the sound of a 59 that I noticed when I had my first 59, it is a bit more toppy, a bit more open, not so compressed, not so creamy, but it's a much more, and can be a much more aggressive guitar, and I think it's probably one of the reasons that a lot of people like them, because it does move a lot more air, and it does sort of, it kicks a lot more aggression. only Les Paul Standard that Gary Moore had at the time of his death is the one I sold him. When he was recording his Still Got Blues album, I took it to the studio at Sarn West, and his guitar tech, Graham Lilliard, called me and said, Gary wants to buy another burst, and it's the first burst he bought after the Greenie guitar. So I thought, and I had this guitar, and it was killer. And I took it to the studio. Gary loved it, he bought it, and the rest is history. And that's a guitar he called Stripe, and that is a guitar that he kept right to the end of his life. And so I'm very proud of that, because he's had great taste in guitars, especially bursts, and I do, and it just seems very fitting that the guitar that he most associated himself with is the one that I had and loved, and I knew he would love it just as much, and boy, he did. He kept it the rest of his life. I wanted to finish with something just to sort of rock out, because standards are sort of, they got the tone, they got the ambient, they got the Peter Green finesse and all this, but at the end of the day, people want to hear a standard move some air. So I thought, can't get enough Bad Company. It's a great 70s, just get up and rock out. So the lucky thing was the band didn't only know the song, but the singer in the band, well, it's on their set list, but he knew it. So I thought, great, we've got a vocalist, it's great. So I got the 60. Now the neck profile is slightly further back again, so your bridge is higher. So you got a bit more clearance, which is great, because you've got more string movement. I like that on the guitar, more air. Now, although it's got the thinner neck, which is not my preference, they're very, very guttural guitars, the 60, especially the late one, that guitar, which is a mid one with the tomato super, as we call it, the non-fade top, and it lived up to its name.
Well, I take whatever I want, baby, I want you. You give me something I need. Now tell me I got something for you. Come on, come on, come on, do it. Come on, do what you do. I can't get enough of your love. I can't get enough of your love.
I was playing a gig as a kid at 15 at the Surrey Tavern, and we were asked to go upstairs to support a band because the support act hadn't actually come. And I always played with guys that were grown up. I was 15, they were like 25, you know. So we went in the service lift, and we come up to the gig, and we come out the service lift, and I looked at the stage, I saw all this orange backline, and I saw this Les Paul Standard on a stand. I just thought, my God, and I gravitated towards it. And at the time I had my first Les Paul was a 68 Les Paul Gold Top. If people Google Phil Harris, there's a dodgy picture of me with a weird haircut about 15 with this gold top 68. Anyway, I remember before we went on, I was walking through the back of the stage. This is called the Surrey Rooms, above the pub where we were playing, the Surrey Tavern. That's what we'd done the gig with Fleetwood Mac. So I was walking through an alleyway, and there's this young Peter Green with all his long curly black hair and all that. And I got my gold top. At the time, obviously, he's Peter Green, he's a god. He outsold the Beatles for 2 years, you know. I'm walking past him, and he looked at me gold top, and he looked at me, this sort of fat young kid of 15, and he sort of gave me a look, a real smile. So, I started seeing these guitars around, going to the stores like Orange, it was the main store that sold original standards in the late 60s up to early 70s. So I really got the bug, and my 68 gold top soon had the gold ripped off and a set of humbuckers shoved in it and all the rest of it. And then by 1974, I'd amassed enough guitars, enough money to about chuck it all in a pot to buy my first standard, which everyone told me I was mad because it was £1,000. One of the most famous guys in the West End at the time in the shop, Top Gear, was Sid Bishop. He wrote the first book on Gibsons. And he said to me, no guitar is worth £1,000. I still know Sid, and I still rib him saying, well, I think I'll get my money back on that one. When you bought a new one, you get a little ticket that went on the toggle switch. It said, do not display in the window. And the reason was because basically stores were buying them, putting them in the window, and they were fading and people didn't want to buy them. So in 60, in their wisdom, they made a sunburst, which we could see behind me, that's red as the day it was made, and it'll be red when I'm long gone and we're all long gone, because they tried to rectify that problem. But they gave up in late 60 by saying, look, the game's up, people don't like these heavy, sort of cumbersome instruments, and they become very unpopular. And then Les Paul himself, he put his name initially to the SG, and the rest is history. But by 1966, in America with Mike Bloomfield, in England with Eric Clapton, and then obviously on the Beano album, that launched the Les Paul Standards, you know, and from then on they become very coveted. But they've always been, people say today, which they are ridiculous money, but people have always said, myself included, they were always above the price of the musician. You can never find... In 1968, Orange was selling a standard for £400. Now, £400 back in the day would have bought you a luxury car, a year old, 2 years old. So as much as it sounds cheap today, it bloody wasn't.
Well, they only made, I think they made 1,700 in total, they reckon.
But
they only seem to know where 50% are. Is that right?
They say that, but there's a lot. There's ones that show up uncirculated. I actually come across one recently that's an uncirculated guitar, and it was an early 60 59 spec, beautiful guitar, everything totally there, set of white paths in it. It was a total package.
If people watching Britain's Rare Guitars online today and they wanted to buy a 59 Gibson Les Paul Standard, what do you expect they would have to pay?
There was one sold recently for quite cheap money, but it wasn't. It's varying degrees of what do you want. Do you want the guitar? Do you want it broken? Do you want it refinished? Do you want it been worked on and put back together? Do you want bits missing? So the bottom end of that is about 130, 150 grand, the bottom end. Something what you call an issue.
And what about a genuine article?
A genuine article in reasonable condition is going to cost you 180, 200 up. If it's got any grain at all to speak of, you're talking £250,000 to £300,000. If you're talking exceptional grain in amazing condition, there's places in America that won't sell it, and they're talking, if they did, just under the $1 million mark. Those guitars don't reach England. They don't even get to here. They circulate, but not under the radar.
So your deal back then, £1,000, was a good deal?
No, I'm complaining. I think you overcharged me. The biggest thing that people today is the investment side, or it's the prestige side, the kudos. But you know what? Back in the day when we all bought them, in a very short amount of time, a lot of my friends that were playing in bands, I just done the Thin Lizzy thing. I just come out the Lizzy thing when I bought my first Standard. I was playing the 68 Gold Top, sprayed sunburst with humbuckers on it. But I bought my first Standard. There wasn't anything replica-wise or reissue-wise. And if you want to get that sound, there was only one route you could take. And you sold the family silver to do it.
Thank you very much.